Hello and welcome to episode 49 of Lost Treasure Stories. Gary here. Well, I'm back from my YouTube vacation, and this episode of Lost Treasure Stories features 4 true tales of buried and lost treasure. But before we get into this episode, I have a very special announcement to make. For quite some time now, I've had an issue with falling asleep at night. Maybe it's an age thing, I don't know. I've tried listening to YouTube videos of that gentle rain or rolling thunder and other soothing videos when I lay down. Some of them are pretty good, but none of them really sound quite like the real thing. How could they after they go through video production and then coming through TV or computer speakers, right? I think I've watched every nature video on YouTube and I enjoy them, but they tend to keep me interested and awake. I'm sure some of you have the same issues that I have when it comes to falling asleep and staying asleep. I've decided to start producing YouTube ASMR videos that will put me to sleep super fast, and hopefully they'll help you too. I call them my ASMR Lost Treasure Story Whispers Around the Campfire. I'm using our regular videos and creating a whisper voice version. It's a crackling campfire set on a black screen while the lost treasure story is being told in a whisper voice. I did a load of camping growing up, and nothing beats a great story around a campfire on a dark night. The biggest challenge I've had producing these campfire whisper stories so far has been to stay awake while I'm editing them. So they are working. Don't worry, I'll still be producing our regular version of our lost treasure stories as well. And with that, let's get into this episode of Lost Treasure Stories. We have a very special Lost Treasure Found story at the end of this video, so hang around.
We're going to read you word for word a lost treasure story that appeared in a June 21, 1953 newspaper article in the Corpus Christi Times, in Texas. It went like this. Relatives of the man whose grave was uncovered about 12 miles west of Corpus Christi this week, yesterday confirmed the belief that a pot of treasure may be buried somewhere near the grave. The grave of Walter Hipp was uncovered by F.T. Anderson of Agua Dulce. Anderson said he was being guided by dreams and visions in his search for riches and that the grave of Hipp was in one of the dreams. One of the persons who called was Mrs. J.B. Hunter, who said she was a daughter of Hipp. Mrs. Hunter, who lives about 7 miles west of Corpus Christi between Highway 9 and Upriver Road, said her father had been a Civil War soldier, as his gravestone indicates, and that he died and was buried in 1893. Mrs. Hunter said that before her mother was married to Hipp, the mother had been married to Thomas J. Noakes, who operated the general store at Newstown. Noakes died in 1875 and was buried a few feet from where Hipp was later buried. She said 2 children were also buried near the spot. New Noakes, half-brother of Mrs. Hunter and son of Thomas Noakes, confirmed Mrs. Hunter's story, and both Mrs. Hunter and Noakes confirmed the story of buried treasure. My father used to keep quite a bit of money around the store, and when the bandit raids started in 1875, he took a pot of money, believed to be gold and silver, and buried it back of the store, probably not too far from the burial ground, Noakes said yesterday. Mrs. Hunter said that her mother intentionally had the Hipp grave completely covered, including the gravestone. The top of the stone was about 3 feet under the top of the ground when Anderson found it. The family had tried to find the burial ground a number of times in recent years, but the large trees which once marked the site have long since disappeared, and the exact location of the site was unknown. Anderson yesterday assured members of the family that the graves would remain undisturbed. The graves are just as they were, and I have covered the gravestone again. The family can rest assured that I won't allow the graves to be disturbed, Anderson said. The family had feared the graves might be destroyed. Anderson, who said he had dreamed a dream in which he saw the pot of gold buried near the graves, admitted yesterday that he had heard old stories of the gold before he had his dreams. Mrs. Hunter said that people have been digging in the area for several years trying to find the gold. And that's the end of this lost treasure story. Walter Hipp's headstone is no longer underground. There is a link in the video description box below to his gravesite showing his headstone, which also gives more information about Mr. Hipp's Civil War service, as well as his complete information as it appeared in the 1880 census. The gravesite information and gravesite images are courtesy of findagrave.com. Here's a very short lost treasure story from a newspaper article of January 18, 1896 out of Tennessee. Here's a reading of the article. A letter from Flynn's Lick, Jackson County, brings news of a horrible double murder committed near that place. 5 masked men entered the house of Joseph Day, an old farmer, reputed to have money hidden away, and demanded the secret of his treasure. Day refused to give it up, and after numerous threats, he was taken out and hanged to a tree. The brutes then attempted to make Mrs. Day tell where the money was hidden, and when she refused, they beat her brains out with a club. They then ransacked the house, but failed to find the money. No arrests have been made. That's the end of this newspaper article. It was never mentioned anywhere how much money was thought to be hidden. This lost treasure story out of Missouri is from a newspaper article of October 2, 1935. Here's the article. Treasure hunters are invited to dig for $30,000 in gold. William Hutchinson, who lives on a farm near Clearance, has decided to call strangers to his farm to help him dig for the gold he says it's buried there. John Child, his grandfather, buried $30,000 in gold on the farm during the Civil War, and because of Child's sudden death, the hidden place of the money never was learned. Because bushwhackers were rampant in those days and there were few safe places to keep money in the western frontier, many persons buried the money for safekeeping. Child, Hutchinson said, was preparing to take a large herd of cattle to Hannibal for sale. Not wishing to leave the $30,000 in the house with his oldest daughter, he buried it in an iron box. The daughter declined to be told where the money was buried because she was afraid robbers might torture her if she knew the hiding place. Child took his cattle to market. Returning home, he suffered a stroke and died. Hutchinson has spent several years digging on the farm, but has not found the gold. Now he says that anyone may come and dig provided there is an agreement to divide the treasure if found. Here's an 1870 newspaper article about a lost treasure story in Maine. It reads, the fact that Charles Oakes, of West Hampton, Maine, always enters and leaves his home through a window instead of through the door is not the only peculiar thing about the man, and his actions are a continual source of interest to the neighbors. A few years ago, Oakes was a healthy, bright young farmer, living with his mother in one of the largest and finest farms in eastern Maine. He still has the farm and his buildings, but the old mother lies in the churchyard, and Charles, who shortly before her death, fell from a load of hay, striking on his head, is a simpleton, and leads an aimless and indolent life. A short time after the accident, which robbed Oakes of his energy and ambition, his mother died. It was 4 days before the neighbors knew of her death, and even then the son did not realize it. One stormy night he knocked at the door of a neighbor, and said that his mother was acting queerly. She had gone to sleep 4 days ago, and he could not awaken her. The neighbor went to the house and found the old lady sitting bolt upright in her chair, with her knitting in her hands, and a smile on her face. She was, apparently, gazing into the fireplace, but she was stone dead. At the funeral, when the bearers took up the casket and reached the door, the dead woman's son remonstrated violently. Where were they taking his mother? She was not dead, he said, but only sleeping, as she had often done, in her old willow rocker before the fire. Kind friends led him away and the body was carried out. As they passed out the door with the casket, he cried with strange emotion. No one else shall ever pass through that door, he said, and no one ever has. Oakes kept all the doors of the house locked, and the front door was not only locked, but barred. When he left the house, it was always through a window. When anyone calls at the house, Oakes will cautiously raise the window and asks what is wanted, but he will admit no one. Everything that goes into or comes out of the house passes through the same window, which he uses as a door, and ever since the day of his mother's funeral, no human being has crossed the threshold, which he regards as sacred. It is the mystery of Charles Oakes's wealth, however, that most engages the imaginations and the tongues of the Hampton people. Well-to-do himself when misfortune overtook him, He has since been made wealthier by the will of a brother, who died in the West. This brother was a man of refined taste as well as of wealth, for in addition to money, stocks and bonds, he bequeathed to Charles a valuable collection of bric-a-brac, rare china and porcelain, and costly curios. The cups and saucers and such things, the neighbors have seen, but what has become of the money and securities that Oakes is known to have received, no one knows, and no one can find out. It is thought by some that these valuables may be deposited in some bank, but the general belief is that the simple-minded fellow has buried them somewhere on the farm or concealed them in a crevice in the old farmhouse. The fame of the Oakes collection of bric-a-brac and curios long ago spread to Bangor, and many ladies have visited the farmhouse in the hope of being able to purchase some of the articles. Liberal offers have been made for cups, vases, etc., and for the tall, old-fashioned clock, that is a notable treasure of the collection, but the simple-minded farmer has refused them all, preferring to keep the things stowed away in the dusty attic, along with his mother's spinning wheel and a faded coat that his father wore in the war. Lately, however, since the Bangor curio hunters have given up the quest, Oakes seems to have changed his mind, for every few days he comes into the village with a cup and saucer or some other bit of the collection in his pocket, offering to sell for a trifle, although he has no need for money. Another peculiarity of Oakes is that, although his credit is good for thousands, he will not owe any man a cent overnight. The other day he came into Hampton Village and purchased provisions to the amount of $3.27, and when he came to settle found that he had just $3 in his pocket. "Oh well," said the storekeeper, "let that go till tomorrow, Charles, it'll be all right." But Charles would not do any such thing. He made the storekeeper take out a little from each package until the value was reduced to exactly $3, and then he shouldered his bundles and trudged home. He is by no means foolish, nor so incapacitated as to warrant the appointment of a guardian for him. He's just a little queer, the villagers say. But they would like to know what he has done with his money from out west, that's what they would like to know. This Lost Treasure Found story is from a newspaper article out of Arkansas, January 22, 1896, and it read, "Quite a little excitement at Old Louisville over the finding of gold. Long anterior to the Great Civil War, there lived a very wealthy planter in that said historic town, named John Dixon. His residence, afterwards owned by Captain W. P. Parks, now with the name of Baybrook. Mr. Dixon died prior to the war, and tradition comes to us that much of his monetary wealth was buried there, and search after search has been made for the buried treasure without success. Finally the tradition passed out of memory. However, last Monday evening, Master John D. Parks visited the old home in possession of his father, but now unoccupied, and discovered a large shallow excavation near the rock house. Noticing that the dirt seemed freshly broken, he made an inspection. He found that where the ground had been covered with brick, making it look like a short pavement, all had been removed from 1 to 2 feet deep, and that a spade had been used. An old-fashioned 2-gallon iron pot, partly broken, with a rusty tin top, cut with a corner of the spade apparently, sat by the hole, evidencing that the long-hidden treasure had been found. It is supposed if the pot contained gold that the finder was about $5,000 better off Monday than he was Sunday preceding. It's just as well, as we need much gold now, that the digger was successful. The national government will accept it and give the bonds gladly and ask no questions."
Okay, that wraps up this episode of Lost Treasure Stories. Our next episode is coming soon, so hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it, and make sure you have your notifications turned on.